Have you ever felt like something invisible guides your decisions, as if every move, every desire, every impulse comes from a corner of your mind you don't control? A shadowy, primal force that doesn't ask permission or offer explanations, something that's there even when you don't see it. Carl Jung called this the unconscious. But that's not the most unsettling part. What's truly disturbing is what the unconscious hides: a silent, ancient energy that pulses beneath the surface of your life like a hidden vein. You don't name it, you don't confront it, but it's there, shaping your thoughts, reactions, obsessions. Sex. Not the physical act, nor pleasure, nor even desire itself. Sex is a symbol, a psychic engine, the invisible force behind nearly everything you do, even when you swear it isn't. Either why you dress the way you do, why do you carefully craft your words around certain people, why do you work so hard to be admired, validated, seen? And why, when you're alone, does that hollow ache linger in your chest, a void you can't explain? Because beneath it all lies a need older than civilization, the need to be desired, to belong, to avoid invisibility. If you don't understand this need, if you refuse to face it, it will consume you from the inside, quietly, relentlessly. This is where Jung's genius cuts through the noise. He didn't frame sex as society does, a taboo, a vice, or a trivial urge. To him, sex was an archetype, a primal psychic force so powerful that if you fail to recognize it, it becomes your shadow. And that shadow, it begins to dictate your decisions, fears, relationships, even your dreams. It convinces you you're free while whispering every move you make. Sex, as Jung saw it, isn't something to suppress. It's a doorway to your true self. But crossing that threshold demands courage few possess. The courage to confront your most uncomfortable impulses, your unconfessable desires, the masks you've worn so long they fuse to your skin. Here's the raw truth. Most people aren't who they think they are. They're what their unconscious impulses have molded them to be. The more they deny this, the tighter their chains become. What if everything you call yours, your goals, habits, relationships, is tinged by a sexual energy you've misunderstood, mismanaged, or buried so deep it's festering in the dark? What if that repression isn't making you stronger, but weaker, more manipulable? What if your so-called morality, reason, or prudence is just an elegant cage for something still screaming to break free? This isn't about scandal or titillation. It's about a biological and psychic truth society has spent millennia denying. Sexual energy doesn't vanish when ignored. It morphs into anxiety, anger, frustration, addictions to control, approval, hollow success, into broken relationships, chronic loneliness, a gnawing dissatisfaction you can't outrun. And if you don't see it, it's because you refuse to see it. Because seeing it means admitting you're not in control, that a part of you, buried long ago, still pulls the strings. Jones' revelation: your mind isn't a unified kingdom. You're not one self, but many, a mosaic of desires, traumas, ideals, and lies. He called this totality the self, a psychic wholeness few ever achieve. At the core of this chaos lies the libido, not Freud's narrow genital-centric version, but a universal life force, creative, destructive, foundational. Yes, it includes sexuality, but it's broader. Libido is the energy of transformation itself. This is where most falter. They think denying desire is control, that repression is maturity, but all they do is fracture. They split their identity in two, divorcing what they feel from what they show. And this division, it turns them into puppets. What you repress doesn't disappear. It retreats into the shadow, growing stronger, hungrier. Ever wonder why you repeat the same mistakes in relationships? Why you attract the same toxic partners, the same dramas? It's no accident. It's your unconscious replaying old scripts, seeking resolution for wounds you won't acknowledge. What you don't make conscious, Jung warned, becomes your destiny. Your repressed desires don't just haunt your love life, they seep into your spirituality, creativity, sense of purpose. When this energy isn't channeled consciously, it warps. It becomes obsession, compulsion, a desperate hunger for recognition, validation, proof you exist. Look around, everyone's chasing something: success, status, passion, power. But beneath it, the same void, a disconnect from their authentic sexual essence. Jung saw this in patients, educated, sophisticated, outwardly together people, crumbling inside, powerless against a force they couldn't name. They sought spiritual answers, but he led them somewhere darker, to the desires they'd spent years suffocating. Because desire, when rejected, doesn't die. It infiltrates your mind, it hijacks your choices, it turns you into a character, a performance designed to please, to fit, to hide. Here's the kicker: you're not who you think you are. You're a curated version edited to avoid rejection. But beneath the mask, the unconscious rages. Its fiercest fire? Eros. Not just lust, but the magnetic force driving connection, creation, expansion. Repress it for decades and it will sabotage you in your career, your relationships, your sanity. Unexpressed energy becomes neurosis, Jung said. And today we call it anxiety, depression, emptiness. But no one names the root: a severed relationship with Eros, not as vice, but as vital life force. Sexual energy isn't just for pleasure, it's a tool for self-discovery, a raw material for rebirth. But we're taught to fear it, mute it, shame it. So we live half alive, with a psyche asleep at the wheel. Eros disguises itself as ambition, romance, even spirituality, but it's still there, screaming to be seen. How many of your choices were made to be desired? How often have you traded authenticity for approval? If you're honest, you'll see the truth. Much of your life isn't yours. It's dictated by unrecognized hunger, by what Jung called the collective unconscious, a cultural mold shaping how you desire, whom, and why. The mold is ruthless. It defines what's attractive, normal, taboo. Stray, and you're broken. But the real danger? The more you conform, the further you drift from your truth. And that's when the soul revolts. Anxiety, insomnia, existential dread. These aren't flaws, they're cries for help, cries from the part of you that's been locked away. Jung called symptoms the soul's attempt to heal. Your depression is Eros begging to be integrated. But integration demands brutal honesty. It means admitting your chains aren't external. They're in your shadow, in the exiled corners of your sexuality. Until you face this, you'll keep seeking outside what's already inside: love, success, validation. What you truly need is to reconnect with the primal force that's been there all along. Sex, yes, but not as culture defines it, as Jung did, a mirror reflecting your deepest self. So I'll ask again, what if your entire life, your goals, relationships, even your morals, is colored by a force you've refused to name? What if the freedom you cherish is an illusion? The answer lies in Jung's world, where facing the shadow isn't a choice, it's the only path to liberation. But be warned, this journey will rewrite everything you know. Imagine living in a world where every attraction, every spark of passion, every magnetic pull towards someone isn't about them, but about you. A world where your deepest desires aren't random, but coded messages from your unconscious. This is the chilling truth of Jungian psychology. What you desire in others is often a disowned part of yourself. Repressed Eros doesn't vanish, it projects. It paints your unmet needs onto strangers, lovers, enemies. And if you don't see this, you'll spend your life chasing ghosts. Jung called this projection, the mind's habit of outsourcing its unconscious content onto the world. When you idolize or despise someone, it's rarely about who they are. It's about the shadow they mirror. And nothing fuels projection like buried sexuality. Think of the toxic relationships, the obsessive crushes, the partners you thought would complete you. You weren't loving them. You were loving the parts of yourself you'd abandoned. The man who idolizes a woman as his muse, he's projecting his stifled creativity, his anima. The woman obsessed with a brooding, mysterious partner, she's chasing her animus, the untamed masculine energy she's denied herself. These aren't flaws, they're unconscious cries for wholeness. But here's where it gets dangerous. Projection doesn't feel like illusion, it feels like fate. When you're gripped by love at first sight, it's not destiny, it's your unconscious screaming, "This person holds a key to yourself." The euphoria, the obsession, that's Eros erupting from the shadow, masquerading as romance. And when it fades, as it always does, you're left with emptiness. Because no human can fulfill a role that was never theirs to play. This is the trap. Society sells love as salvation, but Jung knew better. Until you reconcile with your own heirs, relationships become prisons. You'll demand partners to fix you, to fill voids only you can heal. The man who craves a trophy wife isn't seeking love, he's seeking validation for his buried insecurity. The woman who falls for bad boys isn't reckless. She's starving for the wildness she's censored in herself. We don't choose partners, we choose mirrors. This is the trap. Society sells love as salvation, but Jung knew better. Until you reconcile with your own heirs, relationships become prisons. You'll demand partners to fix you, to fill voids only you can heal. The man who craves a trophy wife isn't seeking love, he's seeking validation for his buried insecurity. The woman who falls for bad boys isn't reckless. She's starving for the wildness she's censored in herself. We don't choose partners, we choose mirrors. But projection isn't just personal, it's cultural. Every society builds taboos around sex because whoever controls Eros controls the people. Religions policed it, capitalism commodifies it, social media trivializes it. Why? Because a person at peace with their sexual energy can't be manipulated. They don't buy products to feel sexy. They don't cling to ideologies to feel moral. They're free, and freedom is dangerous. Jung saw this clearly. Repressed Eros doesn't just poison individuals, it poisons civilizations. Look at the puritanical CEO preaching family values while addicted to porn. The politician condemned immorality while hiding affairs. The influencer selling body positivity while editing her photos. Hypocrisy? No. Fragmentation. When a culture splits sex into sacred and sinful, it forces people into lies. They wear masks of purity while their shadows fester, and what can't be expressed openly seeps out sideways in harassment, in obsession, in the collective guilt that fuels endless cycles of shame and rebellion. But here's the twist. You don't need to act on desire for it to rule you. Amongst celibacy isn't freedom if it's rooted in fear. A CEO's discipline isn't power if it's repression. Eros is cunning. If denied direct expression, it oozes into your ambitions, your creativity, your rage. The artist addicted to praise, his unexpressed Eros craves connection. The workaholic chasing wealth, her buried passion seeks a substitute. Even spirituality can be a disguise. The mystic transcending desire might still be driven by it, worshiping a god that mirrors their own longing. Jung's remedy? Individuation, the alchemical process of turning leaden shadows into golden consciousness. It's not about eliminating desire, but transmuting it. Sexual energy, he argued, is the raw fuel of creation. Harness it, and you unlock art, innovation, profound self-acknowledge. Leave it in the shadow, and it becomes destructive. Think of the genius composer channeling lust into music, the entrepreneur transforming ambition into legacy. This is Eros in its highest form, not repressed, not indulged, but integrated. But integration demands a death, the death of your illusions. It means admitting that your noble goals might be sublimated lust, that your hatred for a rival might be envy of their freedom, that your strict morals might be fear of your own hunger. This is why most refuse the journey. It's easier to blame the world than face the void within. Jung's most terrifying insight: You are not the exception. The pious man who secretly craves power, the feminist who shames other women's choices, the rebel who despises authority but hungers for control, all are trapped in the same loop, projecting their disowned eros onto others. The only way out is to reclaim your projections, to say, this too is me. This is where society fights back. Culture thrives on fragmented selves, the saint versus the sinner, the virgin versus the whore. To integrate eros is to reject these cages, is to stand naked before your own complexity, to admit that the monster you fear is part of you. And that's revolutionary. A person who owns their shadow can't be shamed, controlled, or manipulated. They become ungovernable. But integration isn't a one-time feat, it's a daily practice. The spiritual ego loves to whisper, you've transcended desire, you're enlightened now. That's another trap. Eros isn't transcended, it's danced with. You don't conquer it, you converse with it. You ask, what are you trying to tell me? When rage flares, maybe it's a call to set boundaries. When lust arises, maybe it's a need for creativity. When envy bites, maybe it's a signal to reclaim lost parts of yourself. Jung's final lesson? The goal isn't to fix yourself, it's to become whole. Wholeness means holding contradictions. You can be kind and fierce, disciplined and wild, moral and sensual. The man who embraces his anemia doesn't become less masculine, he becomes more human. The woman who owns her anemia doesn't lose her femininity. She gains power. So where does this leave you? At a crossroads. You can keep clinging to society's scripts, numbing your hunger with empty achievements, or you can turn inward, confront the shadow, and let arrows guide you home. This isn't about hedonism or abandon, it's about truth. The journey won't be clean. You'll uncover desires that shame you. You'll grieve the years spent living as a stranger to yourself. But you'll also discover a vitality you never knew existed. Creativity will flow, relationships will deepen, even solitude will feel rich, because you're no longer running from yourself. Jung once wrote, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. The choice is yours. Keep dreaming or rip off the mask, stare into the shadow, and awaken.